Jim, what's up with that weird, lonely cabinet behind you?
I
Seems to be
tried today.
on.
I tried. I'm in a different location, and it was a blank wall back there, and so I moved the cabinet thinking it would look good, and it just does not work. I mean, it just looks
I'm not
so.
saying it doesn't look good. It's just it's curious. It draws
I,
the eye.
I've been I've been remodeling my office, and it's all I have in here. So we'll get it better. We're gonna work on it. This is a work in progress. We're gonna make it a podcast room, and so we'll see improvements each week. Maybe we can take note of them.
Yeah, exactly. We will we'll mark the passing of the weeks with the aesthetic improvement of your background. But yeah,
I also have a lonely cabinet. It's lonely in this little corner back there, and
but you're sort of like it fits, right? It's less incongruous, right? It has its little alcove, and you got some diplomas back there, which I mean, I know diplomas are not themselves pieces of cabinetry or furniture, but they fit, right? As opposed to this one, which is sort of a little island unto itself here.
yeah, the wall looked blank. I think that maybe that's the next improvement, Jim, for your wall. It's some artwork on the back.
Yeah, some
Yeah, I have
credentials and frames.
over here to my left. I have some frame stuff going on, so we'll work on it. We're gonna make this place look good.
Well, maybe someone will gift you some wall art because we have a birthday today here on the podcast. Our own Jim Kantowski, another year around the sun. Congratulations! Happy
Yeah,
birthday!
thanks for reminding me. I've been working hard to forget all day.
Oh yeah, no, we're gonna before the episode is out, I'm sure I'll remind you 2 or 3 more times.
To determine Jim's actual age, you have to request a copy of our ADV disclosure brochure. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right. I think it's in there, so you probably can figure it out.
We're not going to throw around any hard numbers here today. People can do their own research on the SEC's website if they feel so inclined. But because it is Jim's birthday, he's another year older, wiser. She may have a particular interest in the topic of the day, which is retirement income. That may become top of mind for one advancing in years such as Jim. And happily to answer all of his questions, Jake has written a brand new blog post available on our site about retirement income, what it is, what it isn't, where to find it, and how to use it once you find it. And I'm glad that we're going to be discussing this topic because it's the kind of thing that I feel like we've been sort of inching towards over the course of the preceding few weeks. I know a few weeks back we did an episode on how to know when you're ready to retire, and retirement income does not, plays no small role in that decision. An episode on where to retire, and of course, that's going to have a significant amount of potentially tax implications for your retirement income once you access it. And even our conversation on dividends, what they are, how to use them, and whether you can live off of them. I mean, I know a lot of people want to know, especially as a retirement income strategy, how dividends play into their plan. But Jake, since you are our author, I'm wondering if you might be able to just lay it out for us. What is retirement income, and how does it differ from non-retirement income, which is the way most of us think of income?
Oh boy. Well, I think I'll maybe just try to point blank answer that question in a simple way. I mean,
Point blank away.
I mean, you just think about retirement income. It's income when you don't have a job, right? When you no longer your earnings are no longer your primary or only source of income, and that's your retirement income. I think we just kind of distinguish it right away as that. But there's a whole lot more to unpack here, and this is such a rich topic. I'm just full of nervous energy because this is such a broad topic, and I know we're getting into now double digits on the podcast. So I think as we get further into these episodes and further into these topics around retirement, I'm gonna end up repeating myself many, many, many times. So I go up
double digits, both in terms of our podcast back catalog and our viewers on YouTube. So it's a lot of double digits going around here. Well, this might be one where we break triple.
We'll get there, and the further we go, I'll repeat myself even more. But yeah, I'll just go back to really the first episode, which is where Zach asked the question, kind of what's financial independence, and ultimately we're really, for a lot of people, we're talking kind of about the same thing, because retirement kind of the cessation from work, the end of work represents that point of financial independence where you're no longer transitioning, right, from earnings as your source of income to other sources of income in retirement. So your retirement income. But I do ultimately want to point back to the fact that financial independence in retirement is defined by the individual, what that looks like from the financial perspective and from a personal perspective. And when we talk about and think about retirement income, it is not a one-size-fits-all picture. And there are multiple viable strategies that anyone can pursue in retirement to have adequate income to maintain their lifestyle. So it's not all or nothing. You don't have to kind of make one big decision and then you're stuck with it, for the duration of your retirement. But it's essential and critical to plan and understand and think about your situation. I do want to throw the question out there. Have either of you all done a 3D puzzle? Puzz 3D was the main proprietor of 3D puzzles in the mid-90s.
I cannot say that I've had the pleasure of doing a 3D puzzle, but you've piqued my interest. Wasn't really doing many puzzles, I don't think, in the mid-90s. I think that would have involved greater dexterity when it comes to the motor skills.
There's a lot of different types of activities now that seem like puzzles, but I don't know if they would qualify as 3D puzzles. So yeah, I'm curious.
So Puzz 3D, they're like the main proprietors. So they're puzzles, but they're in 3 dimensions. And they had all these kind of iconic landmarks. I think we had the Eiffel Tower and maybe the Taj Mahal growing up. But, when I think about retirement income, I always just kind of begin to think about, okay, this is a puzzle. And it's unique to everyone. The picture that we're piecing together is going to look different for everyone. And Puzz 3D, the 3D puzzles were kind of unique because they're in 3 dimensions. You have the benefit of knowing what the landmark is. It's on the box, so you can kind of piece it together that way. But for so many folks, planning for their retirement is like putting together this complicated 3D puzzle without knowing what the landmark is. Like, what is it going to look like? With a 2D puzzle, you can kind of fit the border together and start to piece it together with the image, but it's a little bit trickier with the 3D puzzle. I can speak from experience there. But when, retirement income, everybody's situation is different and their sources of income are different and their vision for retirement, this is ultimately where I want to go, is different. And so that vision for retirement is, right, that's the landmark. That's the picture on the box that's going to inform and influence your strategy for putting your puzzle together. So the first part of the article from the blog really starts off, in, kind of this narrative around the importance of a recalibration of purpose from working years into not working years, or redefining what work means to you, or transitioning into a gradual phase out from work, whatever that is. Defining that vision for retirement yourself. Doing that exercise, close your eyes, picture a day in the life in retirement. What does that look like? What are you getting up each day for? Where are you finding meaning and purpose? Because how you're living your retirement and the level of fulfillment and the purpose that you're defining for yourself is ultimately going to play a critical role in all the financial aspects of your life and in the income aspects as well. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say I'm lost in thought now. I mean, that was a beautiful description of what I should be thinking about, as Zach mentioned, as I get closer to my retirement, as he noted. But it is true. You do have to sit back and think about it. Your analogies are fantastic, Jake. I like to think of the retirement income as how you replace your paycheck that you're receiving now. Your paycheck provides you a certain amount of money each month, and it just comes into your checking account. And I like to think of how do you just continue that on, assuming it fits within this purpose and vision you have. And the one thing I'd like to note about your puzzle analogy also is with retirement, you have this Eiffel Tower or whatever you're trying to build, and you have a box and a picture of it, where with retirement income, that picture is going to change over time too. It's not only figuring out what it is when you actually retire, but then as you go through different phases of life in retirement, it changes and it evolves. You might be more active, in your early years. You might need more medical expenses in the later years. So it is not easy problem to solve, and it is a complicated puzzle.
I was thinking about that. I was kind of thinking about this as an analogy because, 3D or 2D, these are static. The fourth dimension is time. So retirement income is really kind of like a four-dimensional puzzle, just like you're describing. It's going to be fluid and it's going to change over time. And so in a lot of ways, it does kind of take it, thinking about, what that vision for retirement looks like for everyone. This isn't just a one and done exercise. This is an ongoing process. And so it's important to just always be thinking about this. And as I was kind of preparing for, talking about, the conversation today, I came across a really interesting article from the Harvard Business Review. And in that article, they were looking at some research done by a guy named Dan Buettner. And he just kind of had a simple question, okay, around the world, who lives the longest, right? Who has the best longevity? And it's actually the people of Okinawa in Japan that have kind of on average the longest life expectancy, without disabilities. They're living long and healthy lives on average, about 7 years longer than we do here in America. And he began to ask the question, why? Kind of what's contributing to this? And in his research, he began to explore, okay, how are the folks in Okinawa thinking about retirement? I want each of you to guess how many different words for retirement do you think they have in Okinawa, Japan?
How many different words do they have
to describe retirement?
Is this a trick question?
I don't think ask trick questions.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going on the opposite end of trick questions. I think I'm thinking the answer has to do with a certain nimbleness of definition and flexibility. I'm going with 25. 25 might be on the high end. And I'm gonna that's my Price is Right answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think this is a trick question. It's just got to be like either one or hundreds. So I'm going to go with a little higher number. Maybe 50.
I tried to give you a hint. I only asked trick questions. It's 0. They don't have a crystal clear equivalent to the term retirement.
Yeah, I thought saying I only asked trick questions was itself a misdirection.
Yeah.
The kind of closest thing they have to this idea of retirement is this word pronounced Ikigai. And it means the reason you wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
And in this research, it was a long-term study, and they tracked a population center, about 43,000 people. And they, over the course of the research, they continually asked, okay, do you have Ikigai? Do you have a reason to wake up in the morning? And basically what they found is those that had Ikigai, a reason to wake up in the morning, lived longer. Those were the ones who were contributing the most towards this longevity that was found in this population. And I just found this particularly interesting within the context of thinking about retirement and retirement income, because it just really goes to show how, deeply this idea of vision and purpose for our lives kind of permeates, through all these different aspects of who we are, including our financial lives and all of these different components of our finances. So I just thought that was an interesting illustration, to focus on, okay, why are we starting an article about retirement income, talking about what's your purpose, what's your vision, close your eyes, think about a day in the life. It's materially relevant to the financial aspects and planning out your retirement income.
That's going to be just sort of my natural follow-up question. Just, in the thought that, what you want to do in retirement, what you think your purpose or your drive in retirement, or how you envision your life. I'd like to craft your life after you separate from work, if that's going to, impact on a constructive level, like what retirement income sources you tap or try to build prior to that cessation of work.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I think it goes hand in hand with a prioritization of what's most important to you. And it goes hand in hand as you think about your future with what you're most concerned about. So, what are your greatest concerns as you head into retirement? Are you concerned about outliving your money? Are you concerned about not being able to maintain your purchasing power, maintaining your lifestyle in the face of inflation? Are you concerned about navigating the ups and downs of markets? What are your concerns? I think it kind of immediately goes in that direction. All of these things are then what we can use to construct an appropriate mix of sources of income that are unique to your financial situation.
When you get into those concerns, Jake, I think you nailed it. That really determines on how you provide or how you create those strategies to provide that retirement income and the risk you essentially take in terms of implementing and designing those strategies, because you can do them in multiple ways, and your concerns in retirement will absolutely drive them. Yep.
And in the article, we try to, first kind of lay out a roadmap for, okay, once you get to this point, you're thinking about your vision for retirement, you're thinking about your concerns in retirement. Now, how do we connect the dots to the income piece? Well, you kind of have to go through a numerical exercise, to begin this process. And we really like to start with what your current expenses are. What's your lifestyle look like? What are financial objectives that you have? How are your expenses going to be different in the next 5, 10, and even 25 years potentially than they are today? So understand what your expenses are, and then take a look at and just do an inventory of what are my potential sources for retirement income. And we just categorize these as simply as we possibly can into 2 categories: portfolio income and guaranteed income. And guaranteed kind of comes, in quotation marks. This is income with a high degree of certainty, streams of income with a high degree of certainty that you'll be able to receive those throughout your lifetime. We call them guaranteed. They're not guaranteed, as nothing really is, but there is a very high and most often a contractual reason why we think that you're going to receive that income for life. So that's kind of the starting point. Okay, what are the expenses? How do these change and shift potentially through time? What do you want to achieve? And then inventory, what are your sources? Then we kind of have all of the ingredients we need to kind of in our recipe to make that plan.
Yeah, I like that, Jake. You almost got to take that spending number. You got to figure out what the income sources are, and then there's that gap between maybe your spending and your income sources, and you got to figure out how to fill that gap with other assets. And that a lot of times is the strategy that we're working to figure out with clients, and how to address their concerns, filling that gap with those investable assets.
Yeah, no, that's right away. I think and it's kind of, you kind of do it quickly in this exercise. You're looking at your expenses and your sources of income, and you're taking your guaranteed sources and you're immediately kind of applying them against your expenses. So you say, okay, these are my total expenses. Okay, this is what I plan to get from Social Security. I have a pension, maybe have an annuity. And so I have this much of my total expenses each year covered. So the rest, that needs to come from my portfolio of other resources. So I need to have a clear understanding for how this portfolio is allocated, what types of investments do I hold, how can those pay me over time, and how can I navigate any uncertainty that exists in how those assets can pay me.
Hey, Jake, I do want to make one point on that, and it's something a lot of times we get in the details, in the weeds of trying to help people figure out. Even though you have those income sources, like Social Security, for example, is one that we talk about a lot. Those income sources can change based on when you take them. So, if you retire at 62 and you say, hey, I'm just going to take my income source and then fill in the rest with these other assets, that actually may not be the right strategy. It may be to wait on taking that guaranteed income source so it becomes larger at an age in the future. And in the meantime, you fill the gap with these other assets. And that is good for two things. Number one, it allows your guaranteed income source to increase over time, and that protects against longevity. And then the other thing, which a lot of people don't think about, is it may give you an opportunity to take advantage of some lower tax rates in those years before you have to start taking Social Security, you have to start taking required minimum distributions and that sort of thing.
Oh man, we are peeling back the layers of the onion.
Oh yeah,
It's great because that's really what it is. Like as we kind of dive deeper into putting this puzzle together, we kind of uncover more and more questions around how do these pieces fit together. Social Security, great example. Okay, I have this benefit estimate. I'm getting ready to retire. This benefit estimate, it's giving me a different amount at different ages. What's the deal with that? And what decision should I make around that? Should I delay and get a higher monthly benefit? And if I do that, what are the potential benefits? What are the potential trade-offs? And how am I going to kind of cover the difference? Do I have enough in the way of other resources to be able to do that for this period of time? Or another example is I have, a pension from my employer, but they're also giving me a lump sum option. So I can either take a lump sum now, or they can promise to pay me a stream of income for the rest of my life. Which one should I do? And what are the tax implications for all of this?
Zach and I, go ahead, Zach. You might be touching on the same thing I was about to touch on.
No, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Jim may have been referring to the fact that we just had a meeting with a client who's wrestling with that very question. You have the opportunity to take the pension, or you have the opportunity to take the lump sum all at once, but you give up. You effectively turn what is a guaranteed source of income, that is to say the pension, and you turn it into portfolio income because you're going to take that one-time lump sum and presumably invest it into the market, which becomes part of your portfolio, which will return at a variable rate. But Jake, I'm glad you brought up the possibility of having, if your employer provides you with the opportunity to have like a pension versus a lump sum, because I think that's one of the clearest cut situations where the construction of retirement income as it relates to how you envision your retirement and your goals and your Ikigai, to borrow a phrase from those in Okinawa, comes into play, right? Because, you take the pension, you give up the opportunity for, certain tax funding opportunities. You give up the opportunity for certain gifting strategies, especially when it comes to, heirs or those who are charitably inclined. I mean, that question looms really large when it comes to that choice.
Yeah, I think you're really, on to the operative phrase, which is give up. And so in either way, this is a good example, kind of this pension, stream of income versus the lump sum option. And not everybody has this, available to them, but I think it's good to kind of illustrate, one of the kind of part of the choice that you have in constructing your plan for your retirement income is to understand what your preferences are, understand what risks, again, you're concerned about. Because if you, as you're planning your retirement, you're comfortable with ups and downs of the market, you're comfortable with the idea of a systematic, distribution approach, an asset allocation approach to managing the portfolio, comfortable with all that, then you're probably more comfortable with a probability-based retirement income style. And you may be more likely to opt for that pension lump sum with the hope that, okay, markets are going to, on average, deliver a premium versus, what I could receive, say if I had the annuity stream of income or just took all my money, invested it, just put it in cash or in bonds. So I'm going to get this premium and potentially outpace inflation. I'm going to be able to maintain my lifestyle, maintain my purchasing power, spend a higher amount than I otherwise would. So you're maybe in that decision prioritizing the concern about being able to maintain purchasing power, maintain your lifestyle. But you kind of have this potential trade-off, and that is, okay, if I'm willing to accept the probabilities of the market, the ups and downs of the market, then I also should probably be prepared for the potential need to make adjustments in my spending from year to year, depending on what the markets do. And if I don't make adjustments when and if they're necessary, that could potentially jeopardize the longevity of my resources. Whereas I think to contrast, if you choose the annuity stream of income, or the pension stream of income, you are transferring the market risk to someone who will promise to pay you for your lifetime. And you're making the decision really to prioritize and say, okay, I want to make sure I don't outlive my resources. I'm going to get this paycheck forever, no matter how long I live. But 20, 30 years from now, the value of what I'm getting, it's not inflation protected. So it's going to be worth maybe half of what it is today when you adjust and account for inflation. So I'm going to prioritize, this longevity risk, but my trade-off, I may be giving up my protection against protecting my purchasing power.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jake. I don't know if you experience the same thing, but when you sit down with people, you have that camp that absolutely does not ever want to run out of money. And usually there may be a family situation where somebody ran out of money, or they don't want to ever have to rely on somebody to do that. So they're really, really worried about protecting that longevity risk. And then, like Zach's example we had the other day, you have people that don't think they're going to live past age 75. So, they define it much differently, and they're willing to give up that stream of income, till age 100 to have flexibility in terms of, like you said, changing the amounts you receive. You have the ability to dip in to that IRA if it's a lump sum, and have higher income levels in 1 year versus lower income in another year. So you hit it. You not only have fluctuating markets, you have the ability to make a decision on what you actually spend each year, so you can get away from that fixed paycheck a little bit.
Exactly. And I think, when you're thinking about kind of this probability-based preference, in the example of the pension taking the lump sum, Zach, I think you kind of hit on this as well. And one of the examples you gave was maybe you're doing this so that you have potential, you're enhancing your gifting opportunities. You have a lump sum that you can manage and potentially grow over time. You can take out in, different ways from that lump sum over time. Maybe gifting's a priority to you, or maybe being prepared to manage the higher potential costs of, say, long-term healthcare needs. Maybe that's a priority concern for you. How does taking that lump sum compare and contrast to taking the stream of income? Which one gives you greater flexibility to be able to manage those higher potential expected expenses? I think all of these kind of factors do play into, these decisions at kind of a granular level. We're just talking about one example with a pension, but these types of considerations really play into how you're constructing your plan, regardless of what your exact and unique set of choices are for your sources of income.
I'm waiting for Zach to summarize this, but
I thought you talked about this.
yeah,
We're going to
you can't see us looking at each other trying to figure this out. So
exactly.
when
trade-off is a summary. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a trade-off. So like when you talk about retirement income, number one, it's not super easy. There's not only income that you have to factor into this equation, like where you're going to receive your income. There's longevity, there's how long you're going to live, there's family members, there's so many different decisions. And a lot of times in our business, a lot of advisors approach this from a mathematical standpoint, and they don't always take into consideration, which is extremely important, the other side of the equation. Like, put yourself in your client's shoes, and they're sitting there. They might want to access their money and be able to live, and their purpose that you just described earlier may require spending a lot of money in the next 20 years, as opposed to saving it up for a future generation, or just they may be okay with having less, when they can't do things. And those are the things you really got to take into consideration when you're creating this retirement income plan. It's not cut and dry.
It's not cut and dry. It's not one size fits all either. And so, I think it's not all or nothing. So you don't have to decide, okay, I'm purely going to commit to a probability-based approach to my retirement income. I'm going to really lean on the potential, returns of the markets over time for everything that I need. That's not going to be suitable for everyone. And so for some folks, they may want to layer in as many sources of guaranteed income or contractually certain sources of income as they can, to allow them to be comfortable taking on risk in other areas, their portfolio income in particular.
Yep.
All right. I feel as though Jim's laughing at me.
We
Why are
got
we
some
laughing?
dry hair. I mean, we really have an experience as dry hair. I mean, we keep hitting on the point. So where are we going with this? We got to give at some point in time. We got to stop talking about feelings and give some answers, right? Like, where do you get your income
Well, we cover that in the article. You categorize it between portfolio income and guaranteed income, and then we talk a good bit about Social Security, pension,
Yeah.
required minimum distributions, annuities, things.
I was gonna say, I was gonna ask about the actual, sort of like sources of, I think guaranteed income probably has a few more varied sources than portfolio income. But I sort of felt remiss asking about like specific account types and like different policies after the lovely conversation on meaning and purpose. But it all does fit together.
It does. And then, with each one of those categories, it's funny you say that. Like, so with the guaranteed income, there's different ways of accessing it. There's different types. There's survivorship. You can have survivor benefits on it. There's all these different things. So that's like a whole nother episode in itself. And then on the portfolio income side, there's multiple ways to structure that. Like, some people want to create enough cash or enough fixed income to provide for like 20 years of their fixed expenses, and then they're willing to take the rest of that money and put it in the market and not worry about it. Where some people just look at it as like, let's build 50-50 portfolio. So in each one of those categories you're talking about, then there's different strategies that you can use to design those things. To go back to what Jake really did mention earlier on is what people's comfort levels are. Because if you got somebody really worried about the markets, then you want to go with a strategy where, you're almost, I don't want to say guaranteeing, that's not a word we can really use, but you're setting up a certain amount of money to provide for a certain amount of expenses, and there's a low risk that you're going to run out of that money. Whereas if you're worrying about the market, it can be pretty stressful and lead to some loss of sleep at night.
Yeah, that loss of sleep at night. I mean, that's very real. And so, having that comfort, that level of comfort, that level of understanding in what your income looks like and how that fits with what you're trying to do. And that's the whole process of making a plan. And so as we kind of dive deep into the details of different account types, different sources of income, the timing of when to turn one off and when one on, it's going to look different for everyone. That's where, as we get down, we see, okay, there's a lot of detail that is required in this type of planning. Okay, we're acknowledging that, and then we're just taking that step back and saying, okay, well, it's all going to be influenced by that vision and that purpose and your objectives. And it's not just lip service to that. It's materially relevant to how the choices that you make at that detailed and granular level.
Nail it.
Absolutely. And as Jake mentioned, there is much more information available in the article that we based this conversation on. And I'm sure we'll touch on these topics continuously in the weeks and months to come. But with that, I think we're going to have to wrap up this episode, which is, unfortunately, I don't think we actually came up with a better name. I had originally posed to Jake and Jim when we started this episode to see if we could come up with a better title than Untitled Retirement Income Episode. Well, nothing was jumping out at me, so I think
Ikigai.
Yeah, Jake might have found it. Like how to find your Ikigai. I mean, that may be the title.
How to find your Ikigai.
How to find your Ikigai, or happy birthday, Jim.
Hey, happy birthday, Jim. We might name this podcast the Ikigai of your money, something like that.
Ikigai of your money. There's got to be, there might be something there. All right. Well, how to find your Ikigai. There we go. And once again, because I said I would bring it up 3 times in this episode, happy birthday, Jim.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
See you next time, everyone.